Hello and welcome. We're so glad you're joining us today for our Sabbath School lesson. We're going to be focusing on wisdom for righteous living. Today, you're meeting with me, Savannah Carlson, Pastor Alexandra Bolotnikov, and my good friend, John Lyons. We're so excited to be together today. And right now, we're going to be focusing on Psalm chapter 119, which from a quick reading seems like it's all about obedience. But Pastor, obedience is like a difficult topic. Why do we need to be obedient if we have the grace that God has promised us?
You repeated a few times the word obedience. I want to bring the question back to you. How do you understand obedience? Because it's always, people hear this word, how do you think people understand obedience?
Obedience. I mean, for me, it's, there's a rule that's been set forth and you're going to follow that rule. You're going to do what the rule says. As a parent, I'm like, well, you need to obey me. Do what I'm telling you to do. I don't know, John, what do you think?
Yeah. I like the parent analogy because it's, if the child does not obey what the parent requires of the child, that creates problems because how can the parent effectively protect and provide and all these things that they have to for their kid if the kid, if my dad says, John, don't play in the street, and I play in the street, well, that's an issue. Obviously, I could get hit by a car.
I'm glad that never happened.
Praise the Lord.
Good job obeying.
Well, I am listening to you, very interesting, the parenting subject of this. And I know that you are the mother of two very little twins. Mm-hmm. And you better keep them obedient for their own sakes and safety. Mm-hmm. But until what age do you think such a language gonna work?
Oh my goodness. Not till they're a lot older. I also have a 5-year-old. And of my 3 children, she is the more obedient of the 3. And I would say she was always obedient. We'd tell her not to do something once and she wouldn't do it. But my 2 younger children, we can tell them not to do something and they'll immediately turn around, go to touch it, and then look at us to make sure we really meant it. So, I think personality plays into that, but that rational, like, you don't do this because it's dangerous, that doesn't kick in until later.
Yes, but I'm asking for further age, how about, 13, 14, 15. That's when it comes to...
I mean, if we're going to talk about like full frontal lobe development, now they're saying that doesn't happen until 25 or 30. So...
But in the mind, let me go back the other way.
Yeah.
So this is what I've learned. One thing when I came to America, I've learned this way. Americans don't like to be told what to do.
That's so true.
I mean...
You have to convince us to do things.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We, coming from the Soviet Union, had no other concept than by just being told what to do. And that's what everybody was explaining to me. Here, my friend, forget where you come from. You are now in America. We are not tolerating to be told what to do. And here we see obedience, that's what we hear all the time. And of course, very often we're conflicting 2 concepts from which we have because, for many Christians, evangelical Christians, grace and that's it.
Yeah.
But we as an Adventist have to bring the concept, and in English this concept is called obedience. Do you think that sits well in the American public?
Of course not.
No. We hate being told what to do. You're absolutely right.
Yes, that's what I figured. But I have a good news. because there is Psalm 119 is not teaching us to be obedient. That's misconception. Psalm 19 is not telling us that here is God who 119. Here is God who gives the rules which we have to obey, or else. Because that's another question about parenting, how to enforce the rules.
Right.
Yeah. So let's just read, starting from just verse 1. I'm just curious how the Bible, how your translation reads this. I have my New King James and Hebrew open.
Aleph. How blessed are those whose way is blameless, who walk in the law of the Lord.
The same way in New King James. But do you see this kind of first line, second line? And in the previous lessons, we talk about being blameless or perfect. And then again, what do we have explaining the perfection? Which verb?
The walking. I forget the... you just tell me.
The walking, yeah.
The strolling.
What is the word for it?
That's what was last time. That's right. This is why I want to focus it. Here, it's not about strolling.
Okay.
Here is walking, and it says the law of the Lord, which is definitely a standard translation of the Hebrew term Torah. But this is the big misconception, because for years and years and years, I hear from evangelical Christian preachers and scholars, especially when they refer to Paul and Romans and stuff like this, and law is associated with a bunch of rules, which is wrong.
Okay.
It's absolutely wrong. It's a misconception. The word Torah does not actually imply rule. The word Torah is much broader concept. Let's read verse 2.
How blessed are those who observe his testimonies, who seek him with all their heart.
Testimony. You see?
Yeah.
It says, the psalmist is gonna walk us through, because you mentioned Aleph. That's the first letter of Hebrew alphabet. And if I look in the Hebrew text, this psalm is very long. I forgot how many verses it has. But in the Hebrew text, I'm just scrolling through. First 8 verses start with letter Aleph, and then it's going to go through letter Bet, which is the second letter of Hebrew alphabet. So it's going to cycle through entire alphabet, 22. It has 22 sections. And all these 22 sections, actually, Psalm 119 is a masterpiece of poetry because it basically, think about like this. I don't know. Did any of you specialize and took serious courses on English composition?
I was a journalism major, so writing was a big part of that, obviously.
Okay. So something like this, if in a class on English composition, somebody a professor would give you an assignment to write essay with 5 pages describing a concept with as many synonyms, epithets, and metaphors as possible.
That would be very challenging. And not just that, but also having each section start with each letter of the alphabet, right?
Oh, that's even more.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy.
Yes. So this is exactly what Psalm 19. This is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
But all what it's talking about is law. But it describes it None of it describes it with the word rules. What you hear is law, and then you second one, the testimony.
Yeah.
By the way, it's not only Psalm 119. Can you take a look at Psalm 19, verse 8 and 9?
The precepts of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true. They are righteous altogether.
Does it? They should be. And in one of the verses in Hebrew, they use the word testimony the same way. So, but you see all these different synonyms. So Torah is not. It's not just a law where you have rule. It's not like a criminal code which sits on the desk of a district attorney, and somebody is arrested, need to be charged. So to formulate the indictment, he needs to go, Article 15, Section A, you are indicted, blah, blah, blah. This is not about the, being indicted for breaking. How do you understand the word testimony?
Stories about how you have been changed.
For example. So, the word Torah is used as a description of what Moses wrote. In fact, at the end of his life, in Deuteronomy chapter 31, it says that the Lord put everything in the book of the Torah, or in the book of the law, and finished it. So it's all like we used to our Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. So Moses didn't think about this as 5 different books when he wrote it. It was all called the book of the law. What's in that book if you take it as a whole? Only rules and regulations?
No, it's the story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have the story of creation, fall, the flood, the Exodus. So this is why it is important to see that Psalm 119 is not just like obedience, it's kind of a very narrow take on this. Look at what is actually going on at the very end of our section here. When we get to verse 16, which is in lessons, take a look, verse 14 through 16.
I have rejoiced in the way of your testimonies, as much as in all riches. I will meditate on your precepts and regard your ways. I shall delight in your statutes. I shall not forget your word.
So, have you ever enjoyed studying the rules?
Yes.
Well, that's a little weird, John.
How so?
Well, like sometimes I learn a new game and the game is complicated, but to understand the rules is to play the game well and to be better at it.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, it is.
But you see, again, I like this analogy because it's not coming from allowed, not allowed, allowed, not allowed, although I kind of like, again, going back to the American society, because of the historically well inherited, ingrained rule of law, people are very much, they know what they're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
Russians are way different. Because of the king was, every czar was in his own ways, you can never predict what is allowed and what is not allowed. And there is even the word for it, which we had a hard time finding English analogy, but it's very specific Russian. It's like, the word sounds like нельзя. And so it's very interesting concept of нельзя, which is so very different than an American concept, because it's like somebody, big guy tells you, no.
Yeah.
It's like this. This is actually a different, I like the fact that, okay, you play the game. You want to be successful in a game, you got to know the rules.
Yeah. You have to understand the framework.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not like somebody tells you, mafia boss.
Right.
Stalin tells you, you don't do this, otherwise I'll send you to Gulag.
Right. I'm grateful God's not that way. I'm grateful God gave us a framework so we could understand him and understand what's expected of us as well. One thing that occurred to me while you were talking is you were talking about how, we have this misperception of law being all these rules we have to follow. And I guess that's unsurprising, because even when we read the Bible, there are the sects who were all about the rules, like the Pharisees. Mm-hmm. It was all about, no, you have to follow these rules and you can't do this and you can't do that. How did we go from this framework, this beautiful framework that God gave us, into such a rules-based, legalistic approach to the law?
So, you use two terms here, which I know people confuse all the time: Pharisees and legalists. So, Pharisees it's a sect of Judaism. And let me tell you the truth. They have nothing to do with Christian legalism.
Ah, okay.
Let me explain to you a little bit of a Christian legalism, because there are two sides of it.
Okay.
Because if you look, I've studied it specifically. Christian legalism, it's a derogatory term that was developed among the evangelical Christians to make fun of those who believe in the obedience.
Okay.
So, to be specific, I experienced this back in the early 90s. I have quite a few friends who are evangelical Christians, and I worked with one missionary evangelical organization. I actually was very, very even a bit, it was great experience, but it was kind of a painful experience. So I began, I knew exactly on my spiritual journey that Seventh-day Adventist is the church I choose. So I had no doubts. When as a Jew, when I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior and Messiah, Seventh-day Adventist was the church. But unfortunately, I had many other Jewish friends who became Christians, but they did not choose Seventh-day Adventist church. They chose mainly a Baptist church, and some chose Pentecostal church. And so then a special Jewish missionary organization came to Ukraine. They're called Jews for Jesus. I don't know if you ever heard about them, but their goal is to tell Jewish people about the Messiah. And so they invited me. That's when I first time came to America in 1992. They've invited me to join their evangelistic campaign in Chicago and New York. So of course I came. And I have to tell you that many of my colleagues, missionaries, Jews who are believers in Jesus, were extremely unhappy to learn that I was a Seventh-day Adventist. And they began to taunt me, calling me legalist. So we have to be careful when we use this term in our church, because sometimes I hear this, because Adventists have like a little bit of two extremes in their history. The history of Adventism begins with an emphasis of the law because we're Seventh-day Adventists, the Sabbath, the Ten Commandments, right? But because of some, especially the issues with last generation perfection theology, this fundamentalist issue, so we now, the new generation of ministers and quite a number of churches, especially in North America, went the opposite direction, and they emphasized grace a lot and Jesus a lot, which isn't bad, but they're using incorrect, historically inaccurate terminology. When we refer to the people who are all about rules, we have to say fundamentalists.
Okay.
The fundamentalism, it's actually general. It wasn't only in Adventism. It was all this kind of overreaction to a theory of evolution. You know, like, I don't know, were you ever forbidden to go to movies?
Okay. I was never told I couldn't go to the movies, but my parents' generation, we were definitely told that movies were a bad thing. And I know in some parts of the country, for Adventists, it's still not okay to go to the movies.
No, there are churches and families where there's not okay to do all kinds of different things, and listen to all kinds of different, they have a special view on the music and some other ways. But that's what is called fundamentalism. In fact, the issue of movies, the issue of women in ministry, the issue of, perfectionism, this wasn't invented and coined by Adventists. It was just the first half of the 20th century evangelical Christianity, I would say. But, and it ended with Billy Graham. But Seventh-day Adventists, some Seventh-day Adventist preachers and ministers really liked the idea of Christian fundamentalism, just because it started as a movement against evolution.
Right.
But they overreacted and went into this, tightening the screws all over. And that's why you're referring to the generation of your parents. That's exactly what happened. Until now, we're realizing, we're way past Billy Graham, but in Adventism, we began to realize that only 30 years ago, we lost quite a few young people in the 70s and 80s.
Right.
Yes. So basically, that's what it is. The fundamentalism, this kind of approach, and I like bringing back to John's issue of a game. That's the best way to explain. So, do you know the rule of chess game?
Yes.
The rook goes this way, and the
knight makes the L shape.
The knight.
Yeah, the bishop goes on a diagonal. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. So, you have a game on a party. So let me explain what the fundamentalists do. So here is the position of all the figures at the current moment. Maybe an hour into the game, that many movements are done. A fundamentalist comes and says, okay, I like it. This is the way it's supposed to be. So he takes, how they have this crystal cover for butter?
Yeah.
They bring this crystal cover for butter, they close it down, and they even put the vacuum in it. Don't even lift it. That's how it's supposed to be. No change.
Yeah.
See, we have, of course, you have the other option, the liberal, where the rook goes diagonally.
Right.
Just because it feels like that.
Yeah. We're kind of talking about a historical pendulum, right?
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Because when we look at our relationship with God, I think that it's about balance, right? When we have that relationship with God, we're able to be brought alongside him and have that obedience and have that relationship, that grace, that all of those pieces come together. in this beautiful tapestry that God creates for us. And fundamentalism was like a swing of the pendulum too far one direction. And we got stuck in, you can only do it this way. And now the pendulum has swung too far the other way. And we've forgotten the importance of the framework that God gave us, the framework of obedience, the framework of the relationship that allows us to be within the law. I keep coming back to a concept of this lesson was wisdom for the righteous. Being righteous is about that relationship with God. And how does the framework of the law, how is that a part of that? What does that look like?
So, two things here in this passage. One thing is walking. So this is not the same form as strolling. It's actually walking. When somebody walks, that somebody knows where he or she is going. Knows the direction. I don't know. Do you guys enjoy walking for recreational walking?
Sometimes.
Some people do. I like biking more.
Sure.
But it's the same idea. So basically, when you walk, the law gives you a direction. So walking is a directional. So Torah, it's not only a testimony about the history of salvation. Actually, the entire word, it comes from two Hebrew words. One is or, meaning light, and the other one means instruction or teaching. So it's basically teaching about the light from God, about the divine light. So light is directional. When you put a projector beam, it's directional, and of course you have to walk not into the beam but the opposite, and you benefit because you know where you're going. It's like the headlights of the car.
Yeah.
So that's basically how it describes the framework. Torah is the way of life. It's how you walk. It's how you live. You choose to be with God. This is the way which God is going to take you. He takes you by his hand and leads you into the path. And that's what exactly we're going to see this. And when you refer to wisdom, actually this is one of the characteristics of the Torah. Because wisdom comes from living by the ways of the Torah. And what else is involved here? Going to the end. So with our passage, it starts with the description of how you walk in the path that God describes as the safe and nice and great path. So Torah is the way, it's the path. And then it ends with the phrase, I will meditate and I will contemplate and I will delight. How do you meditate on a precepts? That is basically what we often misunderstand about the Pharisees. Pharisees were not about that kind of rules like no movies and no this. What initially Pharisees were doing, they had their own problem and they had their altercation with Jesus, and some of them rejected Jesus, some of them didn't. We have both examples in the gospel. But they developed a system of meditation on the precepts because they took this literally. So it's not a Buddhist type meditation. It is actually a way of developing ethics. So ethics is an important part of our life. How do you look in the Bible and learn how to act today according to the biblical principle? Take the principle and apply it today. Live by the Bible, and that brings the delight. If we come and see, okay, this is what the Bible taught back then. How do we apply it? Oh, this is the principle. We take it here. Oh, we're delighted. So, in other words, when we say the word rules, especially starting from teenage, it brings resistance. from the concept of American culture? Is this someone who tells me what to do? No, God says. Delight yourself in the fact that you're going on this way. Delight yourself. It's enjoyment. If you put your mind in, if you set your mind in the right direction, you will actually enjoy living by the precepts of the Torah.
It brings me back to John's earlier allegory too of the board game or whatever, because you have to understand the framework in order to play the game. And if you don't understand the framework, you don't enjoy it.
That's right. I can give you an example. First time I came to America, as I said, 1992, and the second day of my being in Chicago, my day in America, I'm just, 21 years old, my host takes me to baseball game. He tried to explain me the rules. It was too confusing. My English was not enough to understand them. It was 2 boring hours of me being polite, being there. I didn't understand anything what is going on. But baseball is quite I still have a hard time understanding all the rules. I finally get in that. But when you get it, I know many people, I don't know. Are you watching baseball?
I'm not a big baseball person, no.
I've been to a game.
I know in Cincinnati, I had many friends in Cincinnati, they keep talking about baseball, and they enjoy it. So I'm pretty sure that many people do enjoy watching the game, but you won't enjoy it if you don't understand what's going on.
100% true.
So this is the same idea. Yeah. You have to have a mindset, enjoy how it works, and this is going to be as enjoyable as watching a sports game together with your friends, eating popcorn or maybe something else.
I love it. I love the concept of our relationship with God comes with this idea about how you can walk with him, that you don't have to try to figure out or understand how God is going to react, because he tells us, this is who I am. Here's how we can have a life together. And I hope that you've enjoyed your time with us today in our Sabbath school lesson. And I hope that you're able to take this information and apply it to your life, that your relationship with God can grow from our discussion today. Have a good one.